Hello, everyone. This is Candice Dickens, dope Black therapist, and I am so excited to be here with Nicole Xenos, LCPC extraordinaire, and the owner of Painted One Healing. How are you, Miss Nicole?
Hi, Candice. I'm doing good. Nice to see you.
It's so good to see you. And I forgot PhD student at Saybrook University in CES. So this woman is busy and doing amazing things. And I'm glad that she's going to take time out to talk about an important topic. So let's just jump into it.
Yes.
What is narcissistic abuse and what is narcissism?
Well, I think just to start out, I think it's starting with narcissism, the diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder. It can kind of been seen as just an enduring pattern of inner experience and behaviors characterized by self-centeredness, lack of empathy, and an exaggerated sense of self-importance. That's a pretty basic definition. When I say that, there's many different forms of narcissism, and I think when I'm working with a lot of clients, there's a lot of need to know that whoever they're talking about is a narcissist. And for me, that's just something that I really steer away from. Narcissism has to impact that person themselves, and they have to be willing to say, this is bothering my life. And in most cases, a narcissist or someone that has those kind of qualities isn't going to say that and not look for treatment. So I just noticed that's something that clients can get a little hung up on, is needing that diagnosis of the
Mm-hmm.
other, and I try to just work towards really their own experience. And I think that's really the important part when working with a survivor of narcissistic abuse. So that's the terminology, the DSM diagnosis of narcissism. And then
Right.
narcissistic abuse, I just see as a type of emotional abuse, really psychological abuse. It involves a lot of different manipulation, where the abuser or the perpetrator really only cares about themselves and what they can get from another person. There's lots of ways that this kind of shows up in relationship, and we'll talk about that more as it goes. But I really characterize it as psychological abuse, more than just emotional manipulation. And when I say that, it includes many other forms of abuse that come alongside that. Sometimes financial abuse, emotional is one, sexual abuse, using children for control. All of those are parts of narcissistic or psychological abuse. And I kind of use those interchangeably at times.
Mhm.
But so if I say psychological abuse, narcissistic abuse, they're kind of the same in this setting. So
Yeah. What does that look like in a relationship? Because when I was preparing for this, there were people who were like, yeah, I want to talk about that. Because like, I think I'm with a narcissist. What does that look like? Because I think you said financial, emotional, psychological. What does that look like? Give us an example of what a narcissist, how do you feel? Because sometimes it's not just romantic partner. It could be a
yeah,
parent or a supervisor. What does that
yeah.
look like?
Yeah, and I think that it's going to look different, of course, for each relationship and level of intimacy and all of those things. But one of my the main thing I work with is survivors of narcissistic abuse in romantic relationships. So that's kind of
Mhm.
more of my specialty point. But I would say
Okay.
in general, there's I think a lot of us now hear the term gaslighting, right? It's kind of a
Mhm.
popularized term that for a lot of people mean, people throw this word around, I think not always knowing exactly what it means. But I would say gaslighting is a huge part of it, is saying something or having an emotion or feeling and then being told that, no, that's not true. Basically being told your own inner experience in some way or another. And really, when I'm thinking about romantic relationship, that perpetuates into really doubting yourself, right? If someone's always telling you, you don't feel sad, no, you're wrong to feel this, it can feel really confusing. And similar happens in the workspace, controlling behavior, just being told that slight little um, markers of that you're not worthy, that you're not smart
Mhm.
enough, a little, I'm reading the messages from the audience. Yes, Gaslighter by the Chicks is an amazing song that really kind of talks about how that feels, and the
Mhm.
reality that you can be a really strong person, because the Chicks, the main singer is a very well-known musician, and she was in a narcissistic abusive relationship for about 20 years.
Mhm.
So it's really showing the insidious nature that I think a lot of shame comes when I'm working with survivors, that they should have known, they should have recognized this.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think that yeah, sorry, I can feel myself going off topic because
Oh
I'm
no,
so.
no, because I'm loving it. Because while you're talking, I'm like, ooh, I may have known some narcissistic. And one of the things that I often hear is that flipping, like,
Yes, yes.
they step on my foot and it's my fault because my foot is there. Right.
Exactly. And there's actually, and thank you for bringing that up. there's something that in the field is called like DARVO. If you've never heard it, it's an acronym. So it's DARVO, and it means defend, reverse, DARVO. Oh, defend, attack, reverse, victim, offender. So exactly what you said. If someone is pushing your buttons or really manipulating you, and you finally say, hey, I'm not okay with this. And something that you'll notice with when you're engaging with narcissists is if you have a boundary, that is real big. If you notice I put up a boundary and it's disrespected, it's crossed over, it's ignored, those are really telling signs. If you're saying this is where I'm comfortable with, and that's honored, I encourage you, regardless of whatever label.
Oh, well. I think we're having some technical issues. Are you still there? Okay, we must be having some technical issues. I want you to continue putting things in the chat so that when she does come back, we can address it. Because one of the things I love what she said was that recognizing that the boundaries are the things that are constantly crossed, right? Awesome, here she comes back. You back with us?
Yes, can you hear me okay, Candice?
Yes, yep. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm not sure. My internet says it's working, but you know, technical difficulties. Yes, so but back to that. I think that is a really good, that DARVO formula is the person in that snapshot reversed. It looks like that person that's being attacked is the attacker, and that's kind of that picture that narcissists paint. They're always the victim, and that comes from the roots of narcissism. Is that it's very deep, young childhood wound where their boundaries were not respected, kind of what they are now perpetuating onto other people. So really, it's a deep core that's where I really hold a lot of compassion, regardless of what this person is doing. There's something in them that's really hurt at the end of the day.
Yeah. So they come from a very victim perspective. So they can't see the harm they're doing. So what do you say to people who will say, well, this person is cheating on me, or I can't trust them because I don't know what time they're coming home, or they smell like perfume, or I've been betrayed before, and this person might be going through their phones, or might put a GPS on the person's phone or their car, or they're following this person, or holding them accountable for every move they make. What is the difference between that and narcissism? And I think she's frozen a little bit again, having some technical difficulties. Right? Because for many people, it feels like the same, right? Because infidelity is an act of betrayal. And research has shown that infidelity of being betrayed registers in the mind like post-traumatic stress registers in the mind of a soldier who's been deployed. And when people have betrayal histories, like what Nicole said about that betrayal comes up. And when that betrayal comes up, it triggers sometimes some inner child stuff, so some wounded child stuff of also feeling betrayed in the past. And when you're with a narcissist, sometimes they'll have trauma issues come, or relationship issues that come, and it causes them to interact with you in a very controlling way where they can't see you. They just see the fear of being betrayed or the fear of being violated again. And so this is such an important topic, because sometimes we'll have empathy because we're like, wow, I know this person's been wounded, or I know they've been going through a lot, or I know that I've done something and maybe I deserve this. And that's the other part of dealing with a narcissist. There may have been something you've done or something you've said, or unintentionally said, that causes them to be hypervigilant with you or controlling with you. And what I love is that Nicole had said that when they get triggered, they don't see you, they just see the victimization, what you've done to them. And they can't see that they might be doing things that make you uncomfortable, or that are controlling or possessive, or they're doing something, as she said, that makes you feel less than. They're calling you names or putting you down, or they're violating trust and privacy. And part of being with a narcissistic is also sometimes there's a boundary issue that she talked about. And the boundary issue might be they be telling things about you. They might be posting things about you or sharing things that are very private, but they feel because they've been victimized, they get the right to out you, to punish you. Because we have an expression in counseling is there's that shame blame game, right? If I shame you because you've done something to me, then I get permission to blame you, to guilt you, and then eventually punish you. And the worst punish you can do to someone is humiliate them, to make them feel it's not they don't matter, and that they don't have to be accountable for their actions. And hopefully she'll come back on and talk more about it. But it's such an important topic because of the fact that many of us don't realize that we've been connected to someone who has narcissistic tendencies, romantically or even parent child. As Nicole had said, a narcissistic person doesn't see the impact they have on the person. It becomes all about them. And I remember watching this episode of Oprah. I'm dating myself, in which this Farrah Fawcett had talked about just being in love with the actor. I forgot Ryan. I forgot his name. So if you remember the person's name, she had a child with him. Please put it in the chat. But she was so in love, and she said, it was just him and I, and the world just stopped, and we couldn't get enough of each other, and we'd be in the room constantly together, and we would not leave each other, and it was just us in this bubble of love and engulfed with it. And he was sitting there holding her hand and saying yes, and it was just like my heartbeat. We completed each other. We were always together. And then fast forward years later, the daughter's on Oprah and had just written this scathing book about her father. And in the book it said, during those moments that he was there with her, we were being neglected. We were outside the room, not having enough food, not having support, not security, not having parenting with us. And we're dibbing and dabbling in drugs, and we're getting neglected because this is the narcissistic experience where only the narcissist and their needs matter. Only their wants matter. So that this love story that was said on Oprah years ahead of that time, fast forward, gets to be a nightmare for the people who are outside of it. And sometimes feels like a nightmare for their children that are in the experience where they're feeling like, I don't matter. Or when you're with the narcissist, there are all these conditions that you've got to meet. You can't make them too upset. You can't make them too angry. You can't make them feel insecure. You have to almost be perfect. And perfection is an illusion that traps you and holds you hostage, which is why it's such a hurtful experience, because the moment you're not perfect, as Nicole said, there's that gaslighting. And she just sent a message saying that she's having some technical difficulties. I know I had a lot of issues with my internet. So here she's back again. But one of the things that I've been talking a little bit about is my experience, watching Oprah and Farrah Fawcett talking about being in this cocoon with the man she loved, and it was just them and her. And then his daughter wrote a book saying, while they were in this cocoon, living in day for days in this room, we couldn't eat. Right? Wow. It was about them, and they didn't get nurtured or parented because they didn't really give those kids attention. It was about them, a very narcissistic experience. So I want you to finish where you left off, because this is such a great topic.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for your patience with the things
you're welcome.
Do, right? Yeah. I was, the last thing I kind of heard was this idea where I think you were kind of talking about if the other person was to cheat or like put a,
right.
Yeah. Can you, I wanted
to what I said was that with the person, sometimes people get betrayed and they'll feel, or they've been betrayed in the past by another partner. And they'll say, well, because this person did this to me, I can't trust you. Yeah. And I've got to put a GPS, or I got to follow you, or I got to hear the recordings, or I got to read your mail. I don't trust you, or you got to let me know whenever you're going to make a sudden shift, or I have to always be with you. And it becomes a controlling thing. And the feeling is, you made me this way, or they made me this way. And abuse sometimes mirrors narcissism. Or I'm wondering, do they mirror each other, or do they overlap with each other?
I'd say they overlap. I will not at all say that all narcissists are abusers or anything like that, but that what you're talking about, to me, and my background is domestic violence, intimate partner violence. There are overlaps, and there's also really distinct things that I think are so important for counselors to know. So in this situation of cheating, which maybe, in a past relationship, they've been cheated on, that feels, it feels reasonable. They want to protect themselves. I'd say with a narcissist, or with someone that just kind of displays in that way, it's going to be more a matter of projection. Like they are probably feeding something that's big with narcissists is narcissistic supply. And that comes from just attention, being revered, being looked up to, being, however that looks like. And in most cases, if you're with someone that you kind of are concerned they're a narcissist, if they're asking for you to do those things and you've shown no signs of being distrustworthy, any of those things, there's a reason that they're projecting that onto you. And all of a sudden, in my experience, for most people that I've worked with, and I guess I can speak for my personal self, is that when a narcissist cheats, how that Darvo comes into play. Despite the fact that they're cheating, which is sexual abuse, especially if they're not letting you know that they're sleeping with other people, etc., that it will still somehow be your fault because you weren't being affectionate enough, that you hadn't really shown up for them, that, and so there's never a time when they can say, oh, this was from my childhood of being betrayed. Because when we think about narcissism, the wound is usually very, very old. It's like nonverbal. It's not a point of like, oh, okay, well, last year I was cheated on and it makes sense to feel weary of relationship, right? And is this person trustworthy? But with a narcissist, that's not the case. It looks differently. So I think it overlaps and it looks different. So I think that's a hard thing for clinicians, therapists, and just people to understand what they're going through is abuse, because there's not a lot of backing around psychological abuse in the court systems. There is nothing illegal about psychological or emotional abuse. California and Hawaii are two of the only states I know of as right now where it's illegal to psychologically abuse someone.
Wow.
So,
the only two states.
Yeah, so far.
Wow. Wow. And what about at work? What does it look like at work? Or even in family, at work and in family? Can you just address that? Because sometimes at work we think, well, they're trying to bring the breast out of me, or maybe I'm not. What does that look like at work?
I would say at work, again, that stepping over the boundaries, having a boss that maybe takes credit for your ideas, is kind of dismissive, that doesn't engage in conversation. If you have a problem or a boundary and you're bringing that up and you're being told you're wrong, that doesn't matter, that you shouldn't be, basically anytime you're saying that this bothers me and you're being told that, oh, well, actually bothers me that you brought that up to me and now I'm bothered. And so now that I'm bothered, it's about me. And I can no longer attune to you. I can't, and that's a lot of what happens in any type of relationship like that. Similar, working with a lot of people that their parents, this is something they deal with the parents. Like if you can think of a child that's, they're very parentified, really, well, look what you're doing to me. Oh, you didn't get an A on your test. Oh, I'm so hurt by that. I really can't stand it. And why can't you be better? Comparison, always putting you down, slight remarks that just really wear away at somebody. Yeah.
Never enough. When you talk about the work, I thought about that movie, Devil Wears Prada. Remember that movie? Have you seen that movie?
Yes.
But she could never do enough.
Yes.
And then we think about the child who's always trying to please.
Yeah. Yes. And that's a big, that people pleasing, caretaking, and that can actually happen. What I find is that it's more the other person, the partner or the child becomes the caretaker, the people pleaser of the narcissist, because they're really just trying to keep themselves safe, right? And if you can be calm, keep that narcissist happy, or keep them, baseline, don't get them upset, you can be cool. But when that goes out of, when you stop people pleasing and caretaking them, then that's when really a lot of stuff usually comes up and the abuse intensifies, because they're trying to manipulate you back into being what they want.
Wow. So this is whole cycle that happens.
Yes. Just like, like any cycle of violence. I very much see it as it is domestic violence. It is intimate partner violence. It is all those things.
Wow. If someone's in this kind of situation, what's the advice you would have for them? Because it sounds like a lot of people have this experience. Yeah. And there's some shame with it, because you said that people usually don't quite talk about it.
Yeah. And I know for myself, when I was going through my divorce and trying to really make sense of what had happened to me, really struggling, because a lot of, even in the domestic violence fields, there's not a lot of knowledge. And when you are trying to share your experience and the things, and a way that narcissistic abuse has been described, which I think is powerful, is death by 1,000 cuts. If you've heard that term before. Right? Yeah. Because they're so small, they're so insidious. There's, and you're trying to point out, well, look at this little cut. And most people are like, oh, you're being too sensitive. And so you're also being gaslit and then minimized outside of
other people.
Yes, because they don't understand what it's like for you. And really, that narcissistic abuse can really lead to high levels of anxiety, depression. So I definitely encourage therapists and clinicians to really notice what they're seeing in their client and really where is that coming from? Because a lot of it's coming from the isolation that happens, the walking on eggshells feeling that happens a lot. And so of course your levels of anxiety go up. But in terms of what should someone do, I would say there's a few things. I think that if you can go no contact, that's always going to be the best. It is the reality that until a narcissism or a narcissist can get treatment and do some work around the things that they have going on, that most likely the cycle will continue because of that deep, deep wound that they cannot, there's this mask wearing that happens that if they themselves were to take off the mask, it would be too painful. So it's really a coping mechanism that ultimately, while I have compassion for, isn't okay because it's harming others, right? It's not an okay coping mechanism. So for people that are in those situations, no contact is always the most advisable. And of course, that's a nice thought, but that might not be the reality for someone. When we think about financial abuse, people that are in marriages and have children with people, it's not that easy to say, I'm done, no contact, and I'm going. And beyond that, which we haven't gotten into, which is trauma bonding, that also has an impact on being able to leave that situation.
I want to talk about that because I was just saying, I don't know why I'm having all these thoughts. I'm thinking of R. Kelly. Like people are like, why couldn't you leave? That was truly a narcissist. But he also provided financial support for a lot of the women who he attracted. They were wounded people who wanted to be one who wanted that support. So it's this thing where, right, this is not good for me, and he's breaking me down, but he's also there for me in a way that people weren't there for me.
And then he's also there. And another similar thing, if you've heard of, there's like a Netflix documentary, Keep Sweet and Obey. But when you think of cults or heavily religious people that are like really looking to, if you think of Jeff Warren's, like, I mean, he has been arrested for many horrific things, and he still has followers, and people still adore and trust and love him because he has manipulated them so much that their abuser is also the person that they love. And that's part of that trauma bond that we're talking about. It's we are finding research that it is like addiction. It shows up in our brain like addiction. So it's not, and that's why when people say, and they do this to domestic violence survivors as well we should have just left if it was that bad, right? And that is so invalidating. And really, I really, it hurts me when I hear people, therapists even, they'll come to me and say, well, my therapist said this, or that I needed to free or let it go. And that's really why I'm so passionate about counselor education, is I think that we need to really know more about this and really be here for our community and the people we serve. So that, go ahead.
Because that adds another layer of shame, right? The shame is I can't please this person. The shame I can't get things right. If I'm the child of a narcissist or in a relationship, I can't get it right. I can't please them. And then there's that shame about telling people and that that I'm not perfect and I couldn't make this work.
Yes. And especially if you think of other, and that's only one part of ourselves, right? If we think in a cultural context, BIPOC, marginalized identities, they're already more susceptible to experiencing abuse. So, and then when we think about resources, accessibility, being able, so all of these things have an impact on how people are able to show up, what they're able to share, what resources they can get. So I think that's why it's so important to me that we have better education. And then when people can find therapy, that's helpful. But beyond that, no contact, I do want to provide a couple little resources because I think it's helpful. No contact is like the gold standard if you can get there. And that's, again, not wanting to bring in shame.
Including an employer, a parent, no contact.
Yeah. And that comes with a lot of different things, right? Stigma and the reality, again, the cultural aspect. Like some cultures, and including my own, like you always revere your elder and you're a parent, you're adult. It doesn't matter what they've done to you. So really holding that piece as well. Like it's not that easy. It's easy for me to say go no contact, but I really want to recognize that that's not the right choice for everyone. So that's that gold standard there. And then there's also a technique called gray rocking, which is another kind of popular term coming around. And gray rocking is basically making yourself like a rock, just uninteresting. If you don't give the narcissist anything to play against, they'll get bored. Really, you're their toy. And once they can't get you riled up or get you reactive, they kind of lose interest. And
can you give us an example of that? Like what that would sound like, what that would look like?
I would say, like, say you're in a conversation and you're a divorced couple, you're talking about kids or something like this. And you're saying, here's a fact, I need to pick up the kids at this time. often the narcissist, and even in my own experience, will then start putting you down, bringing in other things that are not having to do with that, telling you, why are you so dumb? And I don't need to know that, or just really trying to get to you, trigger you, activate you. So gray rocking is not seeing any of that. I mean, maybe you see it, maybe you react. And I think that's part of the healing process, is just recognizing it's not about you, that this person is incredibly hurt and they're trying to put that on you. But if you can sift through all that and then see, is there something that I need to factually reply to? Yes or no, and then move on. You don't have to reply to things that are putting you down, or shaming you, or abuse. You can choose to opt out. So that's kind of what it would look like. Or if a boss is kind of saying things that are they're trying to get a reaction and just not giving them anything, the less reactive you are, the less fun you are for them. So if you're not reacting, that's kind of, so gray rock is a technique that's really helpful, and also comes at a cost. Like anything, you're denying your own want to say, hey, that's not okay, or that's wrong, and really defend yourself, because that's a natural inclination we have. So gray rocking is helpful. And just be weary. How long can you do that? How long can you stay in a relationship where you're not owning anything of yourself to stay safe? So that's that. And then just some little small things that I think are really beneficial, I've seen with my clients in therapy, is journaling, really writing your own feelings and emotions, keeping tab of yourself, checking in, saying, this is what happened, this is how I felt, because that's part of that gaslighting and manipulation, is that what you're feeling is not valid. You're probably making it up. You're crazy. A lot of that. So if you have that touchstone in yourself, like, hey, no, I know myself, and journaling and being able to reflect back, like, okay, this happened this week, last week, this happened 4 times, really being real with yourself. I see journaling as a reality check also. Like Absolutely. You get to say what's true in that space, and really trusting yourself. So I think that is a huge tool in community. And community, I've found, especially for survivors of anything really, and especially narcissistic abuse, that if you can find a community, a support group, somewhere where you feel safe and you can see that you're not alone, you can really feel validated, because other people that have experienced this really understand those small things. Like, where other people might be like, oh, let it go, and that's just divorce. I can't remember how many times people were telling me, well, divorce is hard. Well, I understand that, but I'm talking about abuse. I'm actually not talking about just the act of divorce.
Thank you. And I love that. People say it's just marriage, or that's just your mother, that's just your father, or how your grandmother is. And it's a minimization again of you, the person, and you're being encouraged and reinforced to stay in something that's hurtful.
Yes.
Or stay in a job that pays you good money. You're like, but it tears away your spirit.
Yeah, exactly. And it's everybody's right, and really their inherent wisdom of when that's right to leave, when it makes sense for them, because it looks different for everybody. And I really that's something that I really strive to honor, that, and just hold that space, and know that people have to get there in their own time, depending on what resources they have, because that's a really real thing, to just finances, and like you're talking about, a good job where maybe you hate working there and your boss is wearing you down, but really you deciding when and where it's time to leave, because no one can make that choice but you.
Absolutely. And you matter. And that's huge. You have been just amazing. How can people find you? Because we need more Nicole's, but since we only have one, I want to make sure everyone can find you.
Oh, thanks, Candice. Yeah, I'm at, if you look up www.paintedOneHealing.com, that's my website. I do have a private practice in Boulder, Colorado, and I can serve telehealth anywhere in Boulder or anywhere in Colorado. I also, I am doing my PhD program in counselor supervision, and I also teach at Naropa University. So I teach the Social Multicultural Foundation. So if you ever want to be a counselor and go there, that's where I'm at as well. Yeah.
Awesome. So this is how I am. When people say their information, I'm like, oh, let me get a pen. Say it again where they can find you again, because I want everyone to get it. So I'm going to give everyone an opportunity to get a pen and a piece of paper, because this clinician is extraordinary, and you've heard some information that I hope empowers you. And we want to make sure that you get the help you need. And one of the things I love is that Nicole stopped her practice to practice healing on our platform. So I want to say thank you. So tell us again until last time how they can find you.
Sure. It's at www.paintedonehealing.com. So Painted One Healing. And I'm also happy, if you're not in state, please reach out, because I am part of a network of therapists that are really versed in narcissistic abuse. So if you're out of state, I'm more than happy to try to get you some resources, because I really feel deeply about this. So
Thank you so much. And for those who are in another state and is looking for a provider, I'm the owner and founder of Color of Trauma and Healing, where it's a BIPOC provider directory. But we're also offering for free, if you go to Color of Trauma and Healing, a listing of 34 counseling skills. The 34 coping skills: bilateral, grounding, tapping, breathing. Because what I love Nicole said is that if you become that rock, remember, you're still human within that rock experience. And you have to have a way of grounding you and taking care of you as you're navigating this storm. So thank you, Nicole. I hope you come back again.
Yes, I love it. Thank you so much for having me, Candice. And thank you for all of it. Yeah.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Appreciate
Goodbye,
it.
everyone.
Bye.